After the end of The Last Airbender, we see Zuko become the Fire Lord, trying to restore peace alongside Aang and Earth King Kuei, and Aang and Zuko promising to restore the Great Four Nations to harmony over their lifetime. We see a meeting between these three leaders as Aang realizes just how many colonies the Fire Nation has in the Earth Kingdom, with Kuei telling Aang that for many Earthbenders, these colonies are like a constant reminder of war, becoming scars on the very kingdom itself. Zuko apologizes, saying that his father caused a lot of pain, so he'll remove these colonies no matter what it takes, but Aang says this isn't going to be easy, since getting rid of the colonies will disrupt a lot of people's lives. So Aang says he'll be the one to go around and make sure things are going smoothly, since there's still a lot of imbalance in the world that the Avatar can help fix. So now as these leaders begin the harmony restoration movement, Aang goes off on the side and gets a kiss from Katara as the two realize how much they mean to each other and officially start dating. And Sokka interrupts them, asking if all of Team Avatar can get onto Appa so they can witness the amazing celebration that's coming. Everyone gets on board Appa as they dive through the sky into fireworks. However, as fun as things are right now, this is really just a calm before the storm, as everything is about to go wrong. We see Toph explaining to everyone that fireworks kind of suck for her since it's just a bunch of explosions, but on the side we see Aang talking to Zuko, who notices that he's not enjoying himself, and Zuko turns to Aang telling him that he wants the Avatar to make him a promise. After visiting his father in prison the other day, Zuko tells Aang that if he ever turns into his father, he wants Aang to promise that he'll end Zuko right then and there to prevent him from going too far. When Aang looks confused, Zuko says that his family's dark legacy is still part of him and he's under a lot of pressure, so he needs a safety net, or maybe it's just the world itself is in need of a safety net. But he tells Aang that he wants him to be that for them. Aang says, Zuko, you're not your father and you're my friend, so how can you ever expect me to do that? But when Zuko tells Aang that he's asking as his friend, he tells him again to promise that if he ever sees Zuko going down the wrong path to end him, and while Katara nods to Aang, we see him promise as this story is about to take a turn. An entire year goes by as Zuko wakes up in a cold sweat one night in the royal palace, running to his guards saying that he can feel that someone is here trying to assassinate him, but his guards don't really believe him, telling him that they've kept him safe so far and moved him here in the first place after the last 5 attempts on his life to keep him even safer. At that moment, they're both knocked out at the same time as Zuko sends a fire blast into the dark before narrowly dodging a ball and chain that crashes onto the ground in front of him, as behind him a ninja yells down of the traitor Fire Lord who betrays his own people, and Zuko gets locked in a battle with this woman, having to fire off multiple blasts and take a couple of hits before he's able to unmask her, telling her to convince him not to take her life. She tells Zuko that her family has been loyal to him for generations, so getting rid of her would only make him more enemies, as she reveals that she's the first daughter of the mayor of Udao and is here to stop Aang and Zuko from destroying her hometown of their harmony restoration movement. As Zuko arrives at Udao and meets the mayor, learning that his search for peace is actually very complicated, and he's accused of being a traitor and a coward by the mayor, who tells Zuko that his family has lived in this colony for generations and it's only prospered as it has because of their blood, sweat, and tears in building up the island, so he has just as much of a right to be there as the Earthbenders. Zuko tries to tell him that he's a Fire Nation citizen, so they need to go live there, as the mayor says Ozai would have never let the Avatar and the Earth King bully him around like this against the best wishes of his own people, as Zuko remembers a time where he visited his father in his jail cell. At this time, Zuko screams, asking about where his mother is, but Ozai tells Zuko to try bringing him tea next time, so maybe the two of them can have a pleasant little talk, and maybe Ozai can even give his son tips on being the Fire Lord, because he knows sooner or later the pressure is going to get to Zuko, because he thinks being the Fire Lord is easy, but he'll be back soon enough to ask Ozai for help, and his father will be waiting for him when he does. As things get hectic, we see Aang bringing a new ship of Earth Kingdom firebenders back home, but this time when they land, they're sent back because apparently Zuko has stopped his support of the harmony restoration movement, as things are about to get crazy. We cut to Toph's Metalbending Academy, where we see the students we got to know in that story on the channel already, and they see a massive crowd forming outside of the city gates, wondering if the city is doomed or something is wrong, as Toph sends them flying with some earthbending, telling them to get back to work, as they tell her what's going on and she starts to head down towards the city gates before hearing Appa flying in the air nearby. Despite not being able to sense him with her tremor sense, Toph uses her hearing to pinpoint Appa as she earthbends a pillar out of the ground to send herself flying onto the Sky Bison, finally reuniting with her friends after a long time. It's here where Toph learns the situation that Zuko has holed himself up in Udao with an army of soldiers, not allowing anyone in or out as he continues to shut down the harmony restoration movement he and Aang started. As they fly through the air, Katara tells Toph Aang is going to need her support for what he might have to do, as we see Aang angrily meditating on Appa's head, as in the spirit world, Aang connects to Avatar Roku. Roku tells Aang that he's done everything he needed to do as the Avatar, but the world is still not at peace, but is very clear with his next words, telling Aang he should kill Fire Lord Zuko. Aang struggles because he wishes that he never made that promise, since he didn't even kill Ozai, who was for sure evil, and now he has to kill his friend who taught him firebending. It just feels wrong. Roku says that Zuko was in his clearest mind when he asked for that promise, and tells Aang about all the lives that he could have saved when he was alive, because often in the quietest of moments he'd be with Sozin, who always had his guard down around his dear friend. Aang asks if this means that Roku regrets not killing his own friend, and Roku says yes, that despite the fact that Sozin was really more like a brother, because of him the entire world had to burn for 100 years and even to this day still continues to burn through the peace of a new avatar who did everything he could. So that in and of itself shows the weight of Roku's failure and why Aang must make a different decision. The right decision. Roku tells Aang that one in a position of power needs to put the world first before what they want, and as Aang tells him that he's just gonna go talk to Zuko, Roku tells him that a promise is a promise as Appa finally lands at Udao and Aang wakes up. After landing at Udao, Sokka and Katara notice the freedom fighters they met before as people start to cheer once they notice Aang is here, as he looks at Katara and says, "Ready, sweetie?" and grabs her before taking off in his glider over the walls and guards of the town. When he lands, Aang gives a greeting to the platoon of guards walking his way, saying, "Flameo, hot men," as they tell him that he has to leave because no one is allowed into the city without permission, even the Avatar, before sending a searing hot jet of flames his way, followed up by a kick that Aang also dodges. At this point, Aang uses earthbending to take that guy out of the fight before the other guards charge in trying to save their leader, causing Aang to show off a bit for Katara as he easily dodges everyone's flames. Eventually, part of Aang's outfit catches on fire and Katara puts it out before freezing all of the guards to walls nearby in a rage, saying, "You set my boyfriend on fire." This ends when Zuko finally appears, grabbing Katara from behind as she tells him he's hurting her, and now at this moment it's time for a very serious standoff between Aang and Zuko, as Zuko refuses to let go of her despite her pain, as Aang screams at him to let her go. And when Zuko says, "I'm the Fire Lord, I don't have to listen to you," Aang lets loose a mighty burst of wind from his lungs that makes Zuko listen. Immediately standing up and fighting back, Zuko sends 2 fireballs Aang's way, which are quickly blocked by some light waterbending, as Aang tells Zuko that he came here to talk to him as a friend, but it seems like Zuko forgot what they fought so hard for all these years. And it's here where the patterns across Aang's body begin to light up, as he tells Zuko that maybe Avatar Roku was right to tell Aang to keep his promise with Zuko, because he's getting the feeling that killing Zuko is the only way to stop everything that's about to happen. As his thoughts begin to spiral, we see air gathering around him in a massive tornado that pushes everyone back, with Katara screaming to Aang to calm down before he completely loses control. Thankfully for Zuko, Katara is able to get through to Aang by calling him sweetie and putting her hand on his face, as Aang stands there shocked that he almost ended his friend. But Zuko finally agrees that it's time for everyone to calm down here so they can talk. Walking through the town, Zuko explains to Aang that Udao is one of the first colonies the Firebenders had in the Earth Kingdom, but its story differs from some of the ones from the war that Aang is familiar with. The story of Udao is that of Fire Nation immigrants arriving there when it was just a humble village at the bottom of a mountain and working together with the native people who lived there to create a flourishing economy based around their combined talents. Using earthbending and firebending, this town is able to produce the greatest metalwork ever produced on their planet. And that alone is a sign of how great a mixture of both cultures this land is. However, just a few steps from this, we see an Earth Nation man shining the shoes of a Fire Nation soldier, allowing Katara to point out that things aren't as equal here as they seem. Zuko agrees that it's not perfect, but the people here are better off than they were 100 years ago, so isn't it worth it? Disagreeing, Aang says no, and that actually, by ruling over this colony and leaving the Harmony Restoration movement, all Zuko has done is accelerate the world towards another great war. Zuko and Aang walk through the first Firebender colony in the Earth Kingdom, as Zuko explains to Aang that he had every intention of arriving here and giving the Earth Kingdom back their freedom. But the situation changed greatly once he got here. We see in a flashback that Zuko tried to arrest the mayor of this colony after he called Zuko a coward and a traitor, but at that moment the man's wife actually used earthbending to not only block Zuko's guards, but as she begs for the Fire Lord's forgiveness, she also uses her bending to free her daughter, an assassin that Zuko already had in custody. Returning to her mother's side, the girl shouts that even though she's an earthbender, through her father she's a Fire Nation citizen who was always taught to be loyal to their country, something that Zuko clearly never learned from his father. As the mother steps in once more to keep another fight from breaking out, telling Zuko to please stay with them for a while so they can show him the way of life in the city, and that's exactly what Zuko does. Taking a similar walk in the present, he tells Aang that back during that time, he saw what the people of the Fire Nation created here and couldn't bring himself to destroy it just for the sake of the Harmony Restoration movement, because after all, what they're supposed to be doing is restoring peace. However, doing that here would actually accomplish the opposite. This is where again, Zuko and Aang begin to scream at each other, with Zuko saying that he can't allow Aang to ruin the lives people have built in this country over 100 years just because Aang defeated Ozai, and Aang saying that no one is trying to disrespect the people of the Fire Nation or take away their rights. However, for the Harmony Restoration plan that they both agreed on together to work, one nation can't occupy another. All 4 nations need to live in balance, and this flies directly in the face of that. Shockingly though, Katara speaks up, saying that maybe Udao can be the one exception. And as Aang looks at her confused, Zuko takes this as an opportunity to go even further and say that all the remaining Fire Nation colonies should be left exactly as is, as most of them have been around longer than Aang has even been alive. This is a slippery slope, and things are only going to get messier from here. But as Katara tells him that the Earth King should probably be a part of these conversations, it's decided that the two of them will meet with the Earth King himself to settle this whole matter, as Aang goes over to Smellerbee and tells him that he wants him to make all his protesters leave the area because they're going to go and find a solution right now. However, Smellerbee tells Aang that he'll do as he asks, but warns him that in 4 days, the freedom fighters will return to Udao, and next time they won't be coming to protest, but with their own solution to the problem. So whatever Aang is planning, it needs to happen fast. On his way there, as they sit on Appa's back, Toph says this whole thing is stupid because Zuko has to know that he's wrong and the colonies need to go. But Katara says it's actually more complicated than that. But no matter how positive everyone is trying to be, they can feel the negativity in the air. Here, Aang hugs Katara, telling her that he's glad she didn't let him do something he'd regret, and she tells him that if he ever has to keep his promise to kill Zuko if the man becomes too much like his father, that he can't do it in a rage or in anger, and it needs to be when he's calm and knows that he's making the right decision, because if not, Aang will have to live with doubt and regrets for the rest of his life. Back at the Fire Nation Royal Palace, Zuko walks into his chambers and is surprised by Mai, telling him that she had to find out where he was from the officials, since he just left without saying anything to her, which is wrong, since Mai is his girlfriend after all. Worried about her man, she puts her hands on his face and says, "You haven't been sleeping. Have you even looked in the mirror lately? Your guards are terrible for letting you go on like this. I can't stand it. So I decided to ask some friends for help." Here we see the Kyoshi warrior stepping up and taking the lead as Zuko's security detail. However, that night, despite the fact that he should be really comfortable now, Zuko still tosses and turns, waking up in a panic and asking Ty Lee and Suki if they heard anything, but neither of them did. So he apologizes to them for still being nervous even though they're the best guard women on the planet, as he decides to take a walk all by himself down to the fire prison, bringing T down to his father, Lord Ozai, as Zuko says he needs some advice. And as the Fire Lord smiles, Appa goes to bring Toph back home since she's got to get back to her Metalbending Academy. However, as she leaps off of Appa with Sokka behind her, she does some cool earthbending to create some ramps for them to land safely, as she expects to sense her students diligently training inside. Instead, what she finds is all three of them walking away with luggage like they've given up on their training. So yelling at them, they all turn their attention to her and her mysterious friend, asking just who the waterbender guy is. There, Sokka exchanges names with Toph's students, Hotun, Penga, and Mu, the Dark One, who explain to Toph that they aren't trying to quit and actually plan on continuing their training. However, they've been kicked out of the dojo. Now this is really confusing because this is the Toph Beifong Metalbending Academy. She owns the building. So as she rushes in, imagine her shock when inside we see an older firebender teaching his three students, with Toph yelling to get out of her school now. Here the firebender Master Kunyo asks who dares disturb his firebending dojo, and that's enough to start a fight immediately, as Toph says that this is the Metalbending Academy and lifts the earth under these benders, sending them up into the air. Leaping away, Master Kunyo burns the banner of House Beifong, revealing a Fire Nation sigil behind it, screaming that she's wrong, because this building was originally constructed and owned by the Fire Nation, who were kicked out due to the Harmony and Restoration movement led by Aang and Zuko. However, now that Zuko is backed out of that treaty, Kenya has come back to claim what's rightfully his, a troubling situation which could be being repeated all over the country, as recently freed lands see Fire Nation soldiers returning to their shores as a result of Zuko's actions. This causes Toph to use her earthbending to turn the sigil into a Earth Nation one, telling the man that he doesn't belong here, and he begins to laugh at her, saying her school isn't even real in the first place because everyone knows metalbending doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. Proving him wrong, Toph uses metalbending to wrap a spear around the guy's head, causing him to not even acknowledge how wrong he was, and immediately stands up like it's time to fight. However, luckily for him, Sokka runs into the room saying there's another way to handle this, as it's decided by Sokka that in 3 days' time, the firebending student and her metalbending students will face off in a fight, where the winner is determined by who can make the other team sit down and admit defeat. As the firebenders take their leave, we see the three students doing flips and all seeming like skilled firebenders, absolutely scaring Toph's bum-ass students. However, they still have a chance as long as they train. So knowing this, all of them start to work extremely hard and get nowhere. They all try to bend solid metal coins that are sitting on top of bamboo shoots, however nothing happens time and time again, leading to the students feeling really dejected. Outside, Sokka asks Toph why she chose these three to train under her at her school since they don't seem like they have much talent, but Toph says that it wasn't her and points to the meteorite bangle that she has on her arm, saying that sometimes it wiggles when she's around other people, and when that happens, she takes it as a sign that those people might be able to use metal bending, since her first sign of being able to use it was accidentally moving metal when she was really upset. For Hotun, she found him while he was eating ramen and accidentally found a wasp in his soup, causing her bangle to shake. Penga was similar. She was crying about her family not buying her a certain pair of shoes, even though their hands were full with other orders. But all the same, Toph's bangle shook. Even Mu, the Dark One, who was just standing on the side of the road judging people that walked by, he caused her bangle to shake too. So one by one, she recruited all three of them to her school. Sokka finds this super interesting, remembering that Katara only found out she was a waterbender because ice would crack under her whenever Sokka pissed her off. But Toph says that there's actually a huge issue with recruiting people like this because people who tend to get really emotional in public are also usually crazy, and what's worse is that no one has proven her hypothesis correct, so she could just be training three random people for no reason. It's here where Sokka tells her that he's actually discovered his own bending powers, shocking her for a moment as Sokka announces that he realizes he's a motivational bender, being able to bend people's motivation. So right here, right now, he wants Toph to explain everything she knows about metal bending and let him handle the rest, as it's time for Sokka to teach a metal bending class. However, they're all absolutely trash. Having literally no other options, Toph explains everything she can about metal bending to Sokka, who starts a class with the three students by telling them that to become a true bender, they have to stop seeing the metal. They need to hear it. They need to taste it. They need to be it. But the students aren't buying it. They're like, why are you teaching us when you aren't even a bender? And despite this, the lesson continues on, with Sokka telling everyone to trust him as he makes them get in their defensive stances. Right there, he tells everyone to close their eyes as Sokka screams, "Stop these!" and throws metal coins at all of the students, expecting them to stop them midair with metal bending, but instead he just darts them all in the head. Sad. As the students all leave the room since they're sick of their time being wasted, and Sokka tries to think of a new way to teach them the basics, he hasn't given up. The next day, as Toph is once again trying to teach her students and not seeing any progress, Sokka wakes up in an amazing mood, telling Toph that he's figured it out because his brain finally turned on. Sokka's idea is simple. If Toph is saying that she discovered her three students because they were able to move her bangle in super emotional states, then all they have to do is get them back in super emotional states to trigger their metal bending, with Toph there to actually guide them through it and let them get a handle for what they're feeling. Seeing that Sokka is kinda cooking, Toph takes him downstairs to an armory below the school where Sokka finds all sorts of Fire Nation armor and weapons, and here he shows Toph the designs he has for something he says is critical in their training, so the two get to working on it all night. Later on in the evening, with everyone gathered, the group starts a campfire so they can eat a well-cooked meal. However, it's here where Sokka starts telling them a fake story about a winged boar spirit that haunts these mountains, that used to be kept at bay by the banner hanging in the academy, but is probably loose now since Master Kenyo burned it. At that moment, out comes a giant winged boar-like creature holding a handful of shoes that belong to our students, as it tries to scare all of them, and immediately we see the Dark One call this out for what it is, saying, "Toph, I know you're in the suit, stop being ridiculous." As he says this, Toph pops out saying his real name, which is Muchi Gucci Lapucci, and this causes him to just collapse to the ground in pain, as Sokka takes out a bunch of coins, realizing that this is the moment he was looking for, and throws them. And they hit the students again, who are all just laying there in sadness. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that Sokka should probably quit teaching. Leave that to Deku. And this is where he plays his final trick. After making sure all of the windows were open, Sokka goes to Toph in the main courtyard of her academy and says, "There you are. Stop sulking, it's gonna be okay. We can't give up yet. I just got the brand new best idea ever that's totally gonna work out." But that's where Toph interrupts him. She says, "Do you ever think about metal?" With Sokka replying that he doesn't because any leftover brain power he has is spent thinking about meat. But Toph tells him that metal is just part of the earth. It all comes from the ground, or even in some extreme instances from pieces of someone else's ground that crashes into Earth, becoming part of it. But what makes it different is that to become metal, Earth has to go through the process of getting heated, melted, folded, and smashed. It's really terrible if you think about what the Earth actually has to go through to change. It's nothing but pressure and pain. But that got her thinking. Back when she first discovered metal bending, she was in a tiny metal cell on the way back to her parents' house and wanted nothing more than to escape, because she felt the pressure of her parents' expectations creeping back into her life, life and the pain of once again returning to a life of being someone that she's not. She couldn't take it. Toph continues on by saying that right now, she has 3 students that she selected for this school. Her dream was for all of them to become Metalbenders because she wanted to teach somebody the most stubborn part of the most stubborn element, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe she's just being stubborn and expecting her students to be something they aren't. And there, Toph stands up telling Sokka that this all makes her feel like she's actually no different from her parents and that maybe that's all this is. This whole thing is just her attempt at pushing off the pressure and pain that she felt living at home onto someone else so that they can deal with it and she doesn't have to. And that's where Sokka finally steps in saying that this isn't that kind of place and that's not why she made it. However, Toph isn't here to listen. She walks back into the dojo and tells Sokka that tomorrow when Master Kunyo comes in, she's going to apologize and give him back to school because what she's doing here is wrong. And as she walks away and goes back to her bed, we see that all 3 of Toph's students were able to hear this conversation, so let's see if that motivation actually starts to bend. Now, right at the crack of dawn, you know that Master Kunyo was going to be right on time, ready to get this sham over with so he can get his dojo back, as he screams, "Greetings, enemies! Prepare to be roasted!" Now, while Sokka is joking about how he still has the spear wrapped around his head from when he first met Toph, Kunyo finds our Metalbending master and tells her to bring out her students because it's finally time. However, right as he does that, we see Toph start to sit down because if you recall, the rules are whoever's team sits down loses the rights to the dojo. Thankfully though, just at that moment, Hotun and the others come out running, telling Toph to stand up because they haven't given up. As in his emotional shout, we suddenly see one of the practice coins fly off of the bamboo and hit Toph in the side, completely shocking her that Hotun just metalbended. There we find out that because they heard Toph's conversation and they desperately want her to keep on teaching them, all 3 of our students arrive and use everything they've learned to actually start metal bending as Kunyo's 3 students prepare a combined attack. But Sokka throws a bunch of coins into the arena so that our benders have, well, something to bend. There we first see Hotun using a few coins to smack the girl firebender right in the face, sending her falling off of her sister, as Penga lets out a wicked laugh and bends her own coin into a projectile, taking out the middle sister, laughing about how actually easy this is now that she's got a feel for it, while the dark one shows off, floating about 20 different coins over his head and sending them flying all in a swarm towards Kunyo's students, causing them to try to put up a flame shield, but I mean, you're just making the coins hot, you're not actually stopping them. This is bad. There, not believing what he's seeing, Kunyo steps in telling his students to stand up because they can't lose here, as Toph's trio all send a swarm of coins knocking him right in the face and onto his ass, causing Kunyo to accept defeat and leave before they get any more hurt, as Toph's Metalbending Academy is officially saved. We see Aang going to meet with Kuei, the Earth King, and at first Kuei responds with joy, saying, "It's been too long, Avatar, welcome," thanking them for all of their help in removing the Fire Nation colony in Udao, which was originally Earthbender land. But Katara says that's exactly why they're here, because they actually weren't able to come to an agreement on that issue and really want to set up a meeting between Zuko and Kuei. However, this is where things start to go wrong. Kuei wonders why exactly the Fire Lord is so dead on keeping his colonies, as Aang tells him that he's on his side because he agrees that the people of the Fire Nation don't belong in Earth Kingdom territory, especially if they're still colonizing that land after the end of the war. However, despite that, he still thinks that some common ground can be found between the 2 kings, as Katara jumps in saying that Zuko actually does have some reasonable concerns about the lives of the people who cultivated these areas and rose them up to be what they are today. So maybe there's still a way for everyone to weigh their options and see if there's still a path to peace. This is the last straw for the Earth King, who tells Aang and Katara to sit down and enjoy a lovely meal prepared by his cooks, with our main characters enjoying some pan-fried noodles and steamed buns, but they're gonna have trouble digesting what comes next, because Kuei stands next to the table and says he has something to say that they aren't going to like. So he's just gonna come out and say it. All his life, King Kuei felt weak because he's allowed himself to be lied to and manipulated in the past, and he feels like it's all starting to happen again with Zuko. So Kuei says that he can't afford to be weak anymore, and now is the time for men to be men, as he announces to Aang that he can't suffer liars anymore, and by backing out of the Harmony and Restoration movement, that's exactly what Zuko has become, meaning there's no reason for the 2 of them to have a little sit-down chat, given that Kuei wouldn't be able to believe anything that Zuko says. In response, he decides that he's gonna send his best general, along with an entire army of Earthbenders, to go and free the colony of Udao himself. But Katara and Aang hate this idea, They say, "Your Majesty, do you hear yourself? Please, sending your army would be seen as an act of war. There's still other ways we can settle this." However, King Kuei is not listening. He says that you're either with me or against me. I need you to make the choice because my army is going to force everyone in Udao to decide the same thing. So with that, we officially begin marching towards the drum of war, but now it's time to learn just what Zuko is doing at his father's cell. We see on the other side of the globe that Fire Lord Zuko has officially reached the end of his rope as he decides it's finally time to go and visit his father in the cells to see if he can get any advice. Here, Zuko arrives bringing his father tea, as Ozai wonders if Zuko remembers their old family vacations to Ember Island. He says that back when Zuko was 3 years old, there was an incident where he witnessed a hawk attacking a turtle crab by the water, and Zuko ran as fast as he could to keep the hawk away from the turtle because he has a soft spot in his heart for weak things. But once he saved the little turtle, he stood there staring at the hawk for a while, wondering what the hawk was going to eat since it did look hungry. Not having much time to ponder over this, the waves eventually came in and washed Zuko and the turtle both away, causing Ozai to have to leap in and save him, but that's where Zuko steps in saying, "What does the story have to do with anything? I'm coming to you asking how am I supposed to sleep peacefully with all of this pressure as the Fire Lord, knowing that I'm responsible for all of this even when things go wrong." And there, Ozai responds that he's already told Zuko everything that he needs to know, so he tells Zuko to think on it and return tomorrow with more tea so their conversation can continue. The next day, when Zuko arrives with his father's tea and the two sit back down to continue their conversation, Zuko tells Ozai that he thought about what he said and realizes that his father is trying to tell him that he should have chosen the hawk because it was brave and proud just like the Fire Nation. But Zuko has already chosen the hawk by taking his rightful position as the Fire Lord, and he still can't sleep, so the story still doesn't make any sense to him. It's here where Ozai reveals to Zuko that he still has it all wrong, telling him that it's not about whether or not one side is more right than the other, and that actually, as the Fire Lord, Zuko is the only one who can choose what's right, because whatever side he chooses to be on has to become the right side, and Zuko completely disagrees. He says that he still believes he and the Earth King can settle this conflict peacefully, that there's still some way to resolve all of this without having a full-blown war. However, Ozai disagrees. He tells Zuko that any moment now, the Earth King will march his troops right into Udao and take it from Zuko, who has no other choice but to defend it with all his might, not because they're his people, but because their existence is basically just an extension of his will. Now isn't the time to worry about the Avatar, who's basically a relic of the past, because only Zuko can decide what's right for himself. But Zuko disagrees, showing his faith to the Avatar to his father, who gets disgusted by the sight as he kicks Zuko out of the room with a loud shout, completely ending their meeting. As the road to war has been completely paved now, things are quickly falling apart as Earth King Kuei prepares his army and sends them marching on the Fire Nation colony of Udao. While on the other side of the ocean, we see Fire Lord Zuko doing exactly the same thing, with multiple Fire Nation battleships all headed to protect the city. Now, while this is all going on, we pick up on a group of training in the forest as the head of that group, a girl named Corey, shows off some really awesome movements. Once the training is wrapped up, she hears a voice in the woods from a boy named Sneers, who belongs to Smellerbee's group, as immediately Sneers grabs Corey by the waist and gives his girlfriend a kiss because it's been a while since they've seen each other. Here, Sneers wonders how Corey could possibly have missed their last couple dates to train some firebenders of all people, but Corey says that those people are her cousins, so let's hope she's not like that one streamer. But beyond that, she says not all of them are even firebenders. But that aside, she has to train her friends and family for the possible attack on Udao that's coming up, asking Sneers if he heard all those protesters going wild the other day. Right there, Sneers comes clean that he was actually one of the leaders of that protest along with Smellerbee, instantly getting him shoved onto the ground as Corey says, "How could you?" warning Sneers that she won't accept this kind of behavior any longer and giving Sneers an ultimatum: either follow Smellerbee and be a revolutionary or be with me. You decide. And as she walks away, this is really showing us some of the deeper tensions going on within Udao. Now, this isn't unique. Actually, we even saw something similar happening to Zuko, who got caught sneaking off to see his father by Mai, as Mai tells our Fire Lord that she can't support who he's becoming anymore, so she thinks he'll have an easier time keeping secrets if she leaves him all by himself and walks out of the throne room. This is the last straw for Zuko, who snaps before getting news of the invading Earth Kingdom army. And as we pick back up on the present, the time has finally come. War
begins. On a dark stormy afternoon outside the colony of Udao, Earth Kingdom and Fire Nation soldiers clash, with lightning striking ominously in the background. Above the mountaintops, we see Zuko and Aang standing together having a conversation about how things ended up here, as Zuko says that he doesn't know what to do anymore and he can't find peace when all he can hear in his head is his father's voice, telling Aang that maybe he'd have made the right decision if Aang killed the Fire Lord, allowing him to live peacefully. But it's too late for that now. On Aang's side, he apologizes, as the spirit of Roku appears as well, telling Aang that his friend once made him a promise to prevent any of this from happening. So now is the time to finally fulfill that promise. And when Zuko opens his arms wide, telling Aang that he doesn't feel like he'll ever come back from this, Aang finally erupts in a rage, going into the Avatar state and preparing to finally end Zuko's life for good for the sake of humanity. But right before he goes to land the killing blow, both Zuko and Aang wake up in their respective beds because it seems like they were having the exact same nightmare. Thankfully, this means our characters have a little more time to try and prevent this war before it reaches this point, but now let's see how everything goes wrong. After Sokka successfully helped Toph's trio of students figure out how to metal bend, we see them all celebrating as Fire Master Kunio and his students walk off into the sunset, allowing them to keep the school going with Toph as their teacher. There, the Dark One tells Toph that things changed drastically and pretty quickly because last night all three of them actually packed up their things to leave, thinking that they disappointed Toph and she didn't want to see them anymore. However, because they heard what she said, they decided to stay. Toph doesn't get it. She says, why? It's not like I said anything nice about you guys. But that's where Penga chimes in, telling Toph that she did because she told Sokka that she expected them to become metal benders. And that's actually a huge deal, as no one has ever had expectations for them in their entire lives, other than maybe a wimp, a spoiled brat, or a tall, dark, and mysterious hunk. Okay, maybe the Dark One is tripping on that last one, but the point is that Master Toph was the first person to believe that any of these three could be more than what they think they are, as Toph wipes a tear off of her eye and turns to her students, telling them how happy she is, but saying that they all still absolutely suck, because floating some coins through the air doesn't make you a metal bending master. And there, as she orders everyone to go back inside so they can start their next class and help them on their way there, everyone bows happy that Toph is finally back to herself, as Sokka has actually completed his mission. Now, almost like some sort of reward, it doesn't take long after this for Sokka to spot a hot air balloon landing in front of the academy, where we find out that Suki is finally back after getting an anonymous complaint about a dirt-covered girl and a smelly snow boy causing a ruckus up here, so she knew it had to be them. And after taking a short break to kiss her boyfriend and catch up for a second, she tells everyone that she actually needs them to come with her, because unbeknownst to them, there's actually a massive war starting to pop off between Zuko and Earth King Kuei, so let's head to the battlefield next. Not giving up, Aang wakes up and immediately flies to Udao, screaming from atop Appa that everyone has to evacuate because armies are literally on their way as we speak. But that's when something interesting happens. It starts with a blast of fire, then suddenly a rock on a chain flies right past Aang and Katara, coming close enough that Aang has to use airbending to push it away, and lastly, 3 different axes fly through the air in their direction. So Katara uses her waterbending to freeze them in place, even though that's just literally not how that works at all, as they spot the culprit on a nearby roof and chase after them. There, leaping into a nearby building and using his air scooter as a weapon, he throws a ball of air at the enemy and knocks them over, where it's revealed that the person attacking them was actually Sneers, a member of Smellerby's resistance, as now everyone is confused. Aang says, "Sneers? But I know you, why would you attack me?" And that's when a voice off to the side says, "Because you're trying to kick people out of their homes and they refuse to leave," as we see Corey standing there with a group of other young benders, announcing themselves to be the Udao resistance army, who doesn't care about whatever is coming because they refuse to evacuate and want to fight for their town. Katara doesn't get it. Wasn't Sneers just part of Smellerby's gang? Why did he suddenly switch sides? And that's when Sneers explains to the both of them that he understands their confusion, especially because he grew up hating the Fire Nation for being responsible for the death of his parents. I mean, that's the whole reason that he became a freedom fighter in the first place. However, life isn't that simple, and now being here for a while, he realizes that his uncle and sister both live here and actually thinks it's possible to live a happy life in Udao, which at the very least he wants to protect for them. Beyond that, Sneers also tells
Aang that his girlfriend is Fire Nation, so that's just another reason he's taking their side, as one by one the other members of the Resistance start naming people that they're fighting for who are also Fire Nation members, like their favorite teacher or their mom's cousin or the guy who sells them delicious food every morning, proving that things just aren't as cut and dry as Aang believes them to be. In response, Aang pulls Sneers to the side to congratulate him on having enough riz to pull a baddie the way that he did. However, despite that, he still can't get behind the Resistance staying in town, especially knowing that armies are on the way. So as he denies their request to join them and fight against all three armies to protect the town, all of a sudden a bunch of members of the Aang fan club walk into the room excited to see the Avatar, but things are about to get really awkward. They're actually the Udao chapter of the Avatar Aang fan club. Now, Aang has met members of his fan club before, and they're actually a group that sprung up after the events of the TV show, but Aang is excited seeing them because these guys are a little different, given that they aren't trying to dress just like him, and they actually have what appear to be Western Air Temple uniforms for students. Grateful that they're respecting his culture. The problem is that as Aang is complimenting their fits, he eventually makes his way to their leader's forehead and says, "Wow, the paint on your forehead looks exactly like the real tattoo." And that's where she tells him that they are real. The entire fan club has these in Udao, and they even use the same ink that, but that's where Aang stops her right in her tracks. He says, "Wait, what? Excuse me, lady. Air nomads have to earn those tattoos after years of training. What gives you the—" But there, Aang gets cut off by the fan club president, who tells him, no, it's okay. To earn these in the club, you have to perform and master hundreds of airbender-like forms. Like we're basically— and then she gets cut off because Aang can't believe it at all. Airbender-like forms? Lady, those tattoos are sacred to my people. They're a sign of our pride and who we are and how we see the world. You actually have no right to do what you did. My culture isn't your cosplay. They're realizing that they've messed up but still trying to plead her case. She tells Aang, no, Mr. Avatar, I assure you, each of us has gone through insane amounts of studying your culture. But Aang replies, how the hell could that be true if they'd still do something like this? As he begins to walk out of the room, tensing the grip on his staff and not looking anyone in the eye anymore, clearly pissed off, saying, my people aren't a costume. Our lives weren't a game. As he flies off, ready to make everyone leave this city no matter the cost. We see as Zuko kneels inside his private chambers with his eyes closed, sitting there asking for advice in an empty room. He says, my actions make sense. I have a duty to protect the people of Udao, don't I? I'm the Fire Lord. There's an army marching on my colony. I have to defend it. But more than that, the mayor and his wife let me stay with them and see the way of life in Udao, and my people are living the life that I never could. They're normal, they raise families and engage in community, they don't challenge each other to Agni Kais, they don't tear each other apart. Am I really defending a colony, or am I defending a culture? I think what I want to protect most are their bonds with each other, but the one thing that makes me doubt everything is that this is exactly what my father would do. Leading an army to Udao and going straight to battle, it feels like walking down the wrong path, but I don't know what else to do. I have entirely different reasons than he did, but if I do the same thing, am I really any different? There, Zuko puts his hand on a painting of Iroh, apologizing to the painting and telling his uncle that he knows he just wants to have a quiet life after the war, and he knows he shouldn't actually go to him for advice right now and put him in harm's way. But man, does he miss him. As Zuko stands up to walk away, putting his helmet on as his men tell him they've arrived on the shores of the Earth Kingdom, and it's on. Elsewhere though, on top of a building in Udao, we have Aang sitting down struggling as he tells Katara that his head hurts. He feels confused, but why? He understands how nations work. When two nations come together, there's always one that's stronger than the other, and the strong look down on the weak, which leads to conflict that eventually ends up in the worst kind of life for one group. But that's where Katara cuts in, telling Aang that maybe he's wrong. Aang once told her that separation is an illusion, and his guru once told him that all four nations are actually just one nation. But Aang disagrees. He says, no, I don't want everyone to be homogenized that way. My culture is important to my people. I love being an air nomad because of our philosophy and our food and our holidays. If we just let anyone in, then all of a sudden, what makes us different anymore? What makes anyone different if all of the nations just mix together? He can't understand. Aang is kind of wildin' here. He's definitely giving Republican or something. I'm not really sure what he's on, but I guess he is from a different time. However, as Katara keeps trying to help him figure this out, Aang says that no matter what, even if he has to keep his promise to Zuko that he'll kill him if things ever got this bad, he has to keep the nations from mixing. missing, as Katara explains to Aang that she's actually changed her mind on the Harmony Restoration movement and is trying to get Aang to understand that things are more complicated than that now. However, as Aang is telling her he could tell by the way she was acting, suddenly we hear a loud bang as shouts of "Fire Nation, out!" begin to rumble from the front entrance to Udao, where Smellerbee and her gang have finally arrived, trying to battering ram their way into the city. Aang lands, but Smellerbee doesn't want to hear it. She says, "It's been 3 days, Aang. Did all that talking you did actually accomplish anything?" And when Aang says he just needs a little more time, Smellerbee screams, "Attack!" And her team slams their battering ram into the front gates once more, sending Aang flying back as well, as Katara leaps in, knocking the weapons out of their hands, and Aang tells him that they won't be hitting the gates again, flying in as he headbutts the battering ram as hard as he can, enhanced by his own earthbending, to completely shatter it apart, sending rocks falling down onto Smellerbee's army. Now, while Aang smiles, saying, "Wow, Toph would be so proud of me right now," Katara complains that people are going to get hurt, so Aang uses a little airbending to swoosh away all of the fallen debris, as Katara uses her ice shield to save everyone else except for Smellerbee, who Aang has to fly in and push away. However, Smellerbee says, "What a nice distraction, right?" As out of nowhere off to the side, we see a huge metal drilling machine burrowing into the walls. But speaking of big machines, this is where we pick up on Sokka, Suki, and Toph all aboard Suki's hot air balloon, as they stumble upon Zuko and his army, with Sokka trying to get his attention, but it's no use. So quickly, our three heroes land the balloon off on the side, as Sokka tells Toph to help them get to the tanks undetected, and she creates a tunnel that leads them right under them, allowing our crew to sneak under the tanks, with Toph popping out and punching a hole under one, which further allowed them to get inside and come up with a new plan about how to stop this war, which Sokka leads by saying that they're going to take all of the screws out of these tanks while sneaking among them, and next, the Earth Kingdom army finally arrives. As Aang is trying to stop Smellerbee's army from invading Udao, we see them finally breaking through the outer wall with their drill, as Smellerbee walks in, immediately seeing Sneers and getting pissed that he's here of all places. As Sneers introduces his friends to Corey, his new girlfriend, but that doesn't go over very well, with Corey telling SB that she's already heard all about her. However, SB isn't having it. She says, "You're dating an ash maker? How could you betray us like this?" But right after, she looks at both of them and kind of realizes that Sneers is batting way out of his league, so she kind of gets why he's holding on to this relationship, as Sneers takes offense to that, but starts telling everyone here that maybe there's a solution beyond fighting, that maybe Udao isn't a Fire Nation town or an Earth Kingdom town, but maybe it's both. That's what Katara chimes in, telling Aang that this is sort of along the lines of what she was thinking, but that's when one of the nearby Earthbenders gets tired of this conversation, being fired up for 3 days waiting for this battle. So he lifts up a rock and sends it flying towards Corey, causing Katara to slice it in half to save her, as negotiations between both sides completely collapse and the fighting begins, as both sides collide into each other and things start to get chaotic. So Aang swooshes some air, sending Smellerbee's gang through the front gate, and that's where they see it. The Earth King's army has officially arrived, lined up outside of the gates ready for war, as suddenly Aang is also met by the arrival of the Avatar Aang fan club, who've all grabbed staffs, as they say that they're here to make up for stealing Aang's culture, and even covered their tattoos with headbands as a sign of respect. But Aang wants them to go away, since things are crazy enough already. Unfortunately for him, King Kuwei's general steps forward, reading a decree that the Earth King will be reclaiming Udao as part of the Earth Kingdom, and any Fire Nation civilians will henceforth be treated as criminals and arrested on sight. As Aang turns his head and can't believe what he's seeing, because Zuko's army has finally arrived as well. This creates a situation where benders of all the different nations are here on the battlefield. The only thing standing between an all-out war is Team Avatar and Aang. And when a Fire Nation tank suddenly drives up to the Avatar, Aang's fan club gets in between him and it, telling him to stand back because they'll protect him, but Aang knocks them away, telling them that they're only going to get themselves hurt, as it's revealed that this is actually the tank that Toph, Sokka, and Suki snuck their way into. There, Kuwei's general tells Aang that he promises they'll treat the Fire Nation prisoners better than their country would have treated the Earthbenders. However, there is an easy way to stop all of this, because an army with no leader is like a dragon with no head, causing Aang to lock eyes with Zuko, as he tells the general that there has to be another way. But the general reminds Aang of the cost of war, telling him that sacrificing one life to save many others benders is exactly the kind of thing that happens in war. As off on the side, Katara yells at Toph and Sokka for showing up without helping, but Toph says, "Watch this," as Sokka smiles, saying this is all his plan, and we see Toph leap onto the ground, sending a shockwave under all the Fire Nation tanks, knocking loose all the nuts and bolts that are holding the tanks together, which Toph was loosening during their trip here, completely crippling Zuko's main source of power here. Taking advantage of this, General Hao sends his troops rushing in as Zuko commands his forces to defend the city of Udao with their lives, and both armies clash, but Aang has had enough. He leaps into the air screaming "No!" as he lands in front of Zuko in a rage, screaming that the Harmony Restoration Act was simple. Why couldn't Zuko just play along? As his tattoos start to light up and he begins to go into the Avatar state, but Katara swoops in like Iceman out of nowhere, pulling Aang away and snapping him out of it, because she told him to remember their conversation about him making his decision with a clear mind, as she tells Aang that she'll focus on stopping the two armies from killing each other, but she needs Aang to really go do some soul searching and figure out 100% what he wants to do here, because if he really believes that all nations have to live separately, what does that mean about their relationship? Katara is Water Nation, Aang is an air nomad. Isn't he being kind of hypocritical? There, Katara says, think about our future. The one she sees is one of them together happy with a baby, but is that really possible if things continue like this? So as Katara sends him off with a kiss telling him she'll accept whatever decision Aang comes to, it's time for one final conversation with Avatar Roku. Aang goes off on the side sitting on a cliff face as he begins to meditate using his Avatar necklace to connect with Avatar Roku, with Aang telling Roku about the dream he had last night where he was about to kill Zuko, with Roku standing there egging him on. But that's exactly what Roku does, as the first words out of his mouth are to tell Aang that he needs to fulfill his promise by killing Zuko to restore the Harmony Restoration movement, causing Aang to tell Roku that lately he's realized how much he loves being an air nomad and wouldn't want to be any other kind of bender, saying that if he turns his back on his people's philosophy, wouldn't that mean that his people are finally dead? Beyond that, he's also in love with a waterbender girl. How could the Harmony Restoration movement really be right if in his heart he himself can't even follow it in his own home? In response, Roku tells Aang that none of that matters, because as the Avatar, the health of every nation has to be held above just the nation that the Avatar comes from, and even has to be more important than their friends, their loves, their family, all of it. To prove that, Roku reveals to Aang that Zuko's mother is actually ROKU'S granddaughter, making Zuko his great-grandson. So he's not just telling Aang to kill Zuko because he's some random guy, but he's doing so in spite of Zuko being his family and it bringing him great pain to do so. So while he tells Aang to empty his mind and he knows he'll find the answer there, we cut away to the battlefield as Sokka looks on, watching Aang's fan club actually putting in work and using their staffs and combat style to break up the fighting as much as they can, which is especially impressive because these are non-benders fighting trained bending soldiers. So Toph helps Sokka get involved by making a stone slide that he goes down, knocking apart Smellerbee and Sneers to keep friends from killing each other. As Sokka gets shocked that Corey is Sneers' girlfriend just like everyone else's, but he can't really feel too jealous as his girlfriend Suki is to his left back to back with Toph blocking flames and taking on firebenders, but that's when Toph's students show up using their metal bending to disable all of the Fire Nation guards in their way by flipping their helmets over and assaulting them with coins, as Katara wipes out an entire platoon of Earth Kingdom warriors by herself, but now it's time to deal with the Earth King hiding away in his balloons. We see Katara creating an ice ramp to allow her to go up to Earth King Kuwei's hot air balloon and have a one-on-one with him, with Katara discovering the Earth King cowering in a pool of sweat, saying that he's not cut out for this war stuff and really thought he'd be able to at least co-lead his men into battle, but it just wasn't realistic since he doesn't even have the bear there with him. There, Katara tells the Earth King that he really needs to meet the people in Udao, which he's never been to, because if he doesn't meet the people who his decisions affect, then what makes Udao more than just a Fire Nation symbol on an Earth Kingdom map? How can he really know what's going on? While that's happening, we see the general of the Earth Kingdom army walking into the gates as he screams that this city is back under Earth Kingdom protection, telling everyone to lay down their arms. But when Corey says never, sending her ball and chain straight for the general, he breaks it, telling his men to go in and arrest everyone, as a massive fireball nearly overtakes them, keeping them from stepping forward, with Zuko landing and ordering General Hao to withdraw his men. Not accepting this though, the general lifts several boulders up into the air, ready for a one-on-one battle with the Fire Lord himself, but at that moment, a massive beam of energy pierces the sky. Everyone can see it, as everyone stops to look at what the source of it is, and they see Aang hurtling their way inside of the Avatar state surrounded by the 4 elements, and Zuko tries to talk his way out of being killed, but ultimately
eventually gives up, saying that he really has just become like his father. There though, instead of going for the kill, Aang actually creates a massive crack in the ground, separating Zuko and General Hao as he dives in to save Zuko, who fell in, and we see that Aang has actually completely cut Udao off from all of the land around it for some mysterious reason, as Aang lands and tells the Earth King that he finally realizes why Zuko was right, and that's because right now, the Fire Nation, Earthbenders, Waterbenders, and even an Airbender are all trying to stop Kuwei from what he's doing, because he's not just fighting against a single colony, but he's fighting against the way the entire world is changing, and it's time for that to come to an end as Zuko collapses, barely able to believe that he was right this entire time, and the Earth King calls a pause on the war so that he can actually meet the citizens of the town. But where is this all leading? After Aang completely separates the Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom armies, ending the war at Udao in its early stages before anyone died, he runs to pick up Zuko, who just collapsed after these two have been enemies of each other for weeks. However, we cut away to nighttime as Aang is sitting on a rooftop meditating so that he can have a talk with Roku about the decisions he's made, and Roku does not agree. Aang tells Roku that he's not like him, even though Roku says he is him, but Aang says that Aang would never ask someone to kill their own grandson, even if it was to save the world, because there's always another way. There, Aang tells Roku that he asked him to picture the world and doesn't understand what Roku expected him to see, because when he did that, all he could see in his mind were Katara, Toph, the Kyoshi warriors, the monks who raised him, the White Lotus Society, and all sorts of people that he cares about from all over the world, including Zuko, which are things he thought about before thinking about what country they're from, but maybe that's the point. They're all just people, no matter where they're from. Roku again tries talking down to Aang. He tells him that by not taking decisive action, he is putting the entire world at risk again for nothing. But Aang isn't hearing it. He says that this is a new kind of world where risk is unavoidable, but he can't go back to the old ways any longer, and there, Aang thanks Roku for everything that he's taught him, saying that he wouldn't be the Avatar that he is today without Roku's wisdom, but this is where he has to say goodbye, because ultimately, Aang's way ended up being right without there having to be any bloodshed. So maybe it's time to look forward towards a new path as Aang severs the connection with Avatar Roku by breaking the Fire Nation symbol off of his Avatar necklace and even burning it with tears in his eyes, meaning Aang can no longer call on Roku for advice, and this actually does have some pretty serious implications for Aang's powers moving forward that we'll explore in another story. But that isn't the end of the story. You see, as he's crying on the roof, who else do we hear but Uncle Iroh, who tells Aang that Zuko is finally awake, so he should come inside for some tea. As inside, he thanks Aang for bringing Zuko to him, since the Fire Lord can be pretty hard-headed about asking for help, even though he always has a place at Iroh's. At that point, Aang and Zuko talk back and forth about everything that's happened, but next let's talk about how the story finally reaches its end as Zuko comes to a decision of his own. Zuko apologizes to Aang and tells him that he should have never made Aang promise to end his life if he ever took a wrong turn, because by doing that, he was basically forcing Aang to choose right and wrong for Zuko and wasn't taking responsibility for his own actions. From there, he continues on telling Aang about a dream that he had the other night where Aang actually did kill him, and Aang says he had exactly the same dream. But Zuko says that when he finally died in the dream, he was able to feel relief for the first time since becoming Fire Lord, because during his time as king, he's realized that this struggle between right and wrong just isn't something that the Fire Lord is meant to handle easily, and he thinks that he's meant to struggle with it, as Aang says he feels the same way about being the Avatar. Even if it makes both of them a little flawed, it still feels like the way it's supposed to be, as Aang tells Zuko that because Zuko was Roku's great-grandson, that kind of makes Aang and Zuko like family too, and Aang isn't willing to throw away a bond like that easily. On the other end, Zuko tells Aang that he thinks that the woman that was standing behind Roku was actually his mom, and that's when Iroh steps in, saying that sometimes dreams are the way a person's spirit reveals the answers to their own problems, causing Zuko to realize that maybe finally finding his mother after all these years will be the answer to clearing up this storm of thoughts going on in his head, as he wonders what he could do differently now to actually find her after everything he's tried so far has failed. But Aang and Iroh tell him that maybe it's time to take some new risk, as the two enjoy some disgusting drinks that Iroh made and spit them out while everyone laughs, and this story nears its end. From there, on one side, we see that Aang sits in front of a tree, saying that he's still really nervous about this, but he realized that air nomad culture is going to be lost to history if he doesn't do it, so he makes the Avatar Aang fan club into actual air acolytes, telling everyone that he's personally going to lead them and train them in the ways of his people as a way of keeping
their culture alive, which is the very beginning of Aang's life as a teacher. On the other side of the planet though, we see Zuko sitting in a chair as he tells someone that no matter what he's tried, his father won't tell him anything about what happened to his mother. So he's come to ask the one person that he thinks can get that information out of Ozai, where we see Azula sitting in a chair completely trapped in a straitjacket looking crazy, telling Zuko that she'd love to serve the new Fire Lord with an insane look on her face as she reveals that not a day has gone by where she hasn't wondered about their mother too, and in the mirror we see her mother telling her that she loves her like a ghost in the reflection as this story finally comes to an end. And you can watch my full video on the search for Zuko's mom covering the next story in this series already on my channel right now, but next a new story begins.